Good afternoon, pals. Thanks so much for coming by. My name is Tessa Bide. If you haven't seen any of our things before, then I have a theatre company based in Bristol, UK called Tessa Bide Productions. And normally we make work for young people and their families. We tour it around theatres, but also festivals, schools, community centres, fields, streets, and not just in the UK but abroad as well. During the pandemic, we've had to be a little bit more creative, and we're coming to you guys through a load of different means, including we're doing like bedtime stories. We've had our recordings of our shows streaming, and we're making a brand new audio project as well. What you're watching today is part of our Meet the Team series, and we started this right at the start of lockdown. So I think this might be our 12th one or 13th with Joe today. And basically, this came about because normally when we rehearse a show, we do it in situ in a primary school because our audience is right there, and we can test bits on our target audience, and it's great to have children's input to the work as we're making it. And then we started having chats with the pupils and also the teachers about kind of who was there in the rehearsal room, and there was lots of people there that the children, but also the adults, had never even thought of before, and never thought that, never really considered what a video designer's role would be in a theatre show, or a designer's role, or a dramaturg's role. So I thought it'd be really nice to get to talk to my friends and my colleagues through lockdown once a week by bringing weekly Meet the Team interviews to you through the wonderful world of the web. And so far, because this is our final one today, we've got this amazing archive of all of our interviews here on Facebook, but also on our YouTube channel, and on our website on the What's On page as well. So if you enjoy today, then do check out some of our other interviews. We've got Bryn Thomas last week, who's a dancer and choreographer, movement director. We've got designers, we've got prop makers, we've got projection video designers. There's a whole range of different interviews there for you to peruse. And we're going a little bit quiet in August because we're making this brand new project, an audio adventure that you can go on at home, and there's choices throughout it. So kind of like a choose your own adventure, but not using that title because it's copyrighted. That you guys can go on and kind of immerse yourselves in, to get away from the screens, but act out adventures in your own living rooms together as a family, led into this kind of sound design world made by Chris Menes, and me doing the narration and the script stuff. So at the moment, I'll just give this a little plug before we get going with Joe. We've got a crowdfunder because we are a little bit short on the budget that we need to make this. So if you enjoy what you see today and you want to support the company, to not only pay the artists who have been coming on every week to do these things, but for us to also create a new piece of work, then please do consider sharing our crowdfunder, which is just here, or even donating if you're able to. There's a link in the bio as well, in the doodah, the commenty thing as well. But today we are going to be talking to Joe Stathers, who is an incredibly experienced lighting designer, projection designer, lecturer, and also kind of backstage technical wizard. And as we chat today, if you have a question for Joe that you want to put to him, then please put it in the comments, or if you want to comment on anything that we're talking about. The reason we're doing this live is so that you can interact, and if you're thinking, hey, I never knew that, I've heard the word stage manager be battered around, but I never actually knew what it meant. If you want to ask any of those questions, then put them in the comments. And if you're not watching live, and you're watching this later on, then you can still pop questions in the comments, and I'll see them and I'll pass them on to Joe as well. Give us a hello if you're watching. It's nice to see your faces popping up. If you see me dashing over there to look, I've got another screen because my computer would have a serious meltdown if I had it all on one. But without any further ado, here is the brilliant, the amazing Joe Stathers. Hey,
Hello.
Joe.
Hi, good afternoon.
How are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, the weather's turned. It's looking nice and a bit sunnier at the moment. Hope it stays.
Yeah, yeah, it's so nice to see you. I mean, we've spent so much of our lives together in a car, going from gig to gig, that actually having an extended period of like a year without having kind of your wise words and your guiding presence in my life has been a real loss. So I'm
Oh,
really looking forward to this.
sorry about that. I went and got a real job. Um, it's I've taught for a lot of my life. I taught for 15 years up in Liverpool, and now I'm teaching at Bristol Theatre School, and
It's a nice gig.
it's a great gig. Yes,
Yeah.
and still going on teaching in lockdown as everybody is studying in
Yeah,
lockdown.
you're basically a master of Zoom, right?
That's what I've had to do. Normally, I've done a lot of lighting and I teach lighting, but when everybody's in their own house, you can't go around and move their own lights for them. So instead,
That
we've
would
been
be
learning how
odd.
to do exciting things in Zoom and
Mm,
producing shows and streaming them live from Zoom. So
yeah,
it's interesting.
and doing what we're all doing, which is kind of going, okay, this is the world now at the moment. This is what we've got, and this is what we need to do. This is what we need to create, and what we need to put out there. So how can we do that? And actually, I think there's something about being in the creative industry and being artists that we're kind of primed to think like that already, aren't we? We're so used to problem solving and going, as we'll talk about today, some of the some of the situations that you've been in and had to think so fast on your feet when doing the tech for my shows. We're kind of primed for that way of thinking, aren't we?
Absolutely. Touring is all about adapting something for lots of different situations.
Mm,
It might be a tiny venue one day and a huge venue the next day.
yeah,
And you've got to make those choices quite quickly when you get there in terms of, well, okay, how do we get it to feel the same and look the
mm,
same? Um, Even if you've got a huge different range of technical equipment available. What you try and do is plan ahead and you get some details from a lot of venues that you're going to go to,
mm,
and you can almost picture it in your head. Okay, well, I know I'll use that there and I'll use that there, and that'll be great, and everything will feel kind of quite familiar.
mm.
And then other places that you go to don't have a permanent technical staff, so they don't have anyone who understands how their building works,
Yeah,
and you probably work it out quicker and you know more about it when you get there. So those are the slightly scarier days when you're
yeah.
improvising more, but that's part of the fun.
So I've put on your little description that you're a video designer, lighting designer, but really your job, especially working with me, has been really quite quite diverse, and it's encapsulated being a stage manager and a technician, as well as video design and lighting design, because we went on tour together.
Absolutely, it's been a learning experience for me in that I've done so much technical work and creative work,
Mm,
but the stage management part of it, stage management is a whole different job and skill set, which
mm.
I'm probably up to kind of level one by now. There are people I work with who specifically teach stage management and students who are way
Yeah.
ahead of me
Mm,
in terms of their understanding, because you're an organizer and
yeah.
you're someone who makes things happen.
Mm-hmm.
You're almost a butler sometimes, in that the people you're working with on stage and off will ask questions, and a great stage manager just goes, I've got one of those here, or I already sorted that. And they
Yes.
plan so far ahead and they're so prepared,
Yeah.
that they can deal with anything. And I've kind of
Mm.
had to learn that some of the specific things that I've done touring with you, and particularly on A Strange New Space, is I've never really done a lot of prop shopping or prop sourcing before.
Yeah.
And Strange New Space, as much as it was supposed to travel in a tiny backpack,
Yeah.
that tiny backpack had so many crucial props in it.
Yeah.
Um, and we did, I don't know, we did nearly 200 shows, 150 shows or something. I remember just hitting show 100.
Yeah,
At
we
a,
marked that
at,
one, didn't we?
we did, yeah, at a school somewhere in the southwest. But then it continued to go and go, and some of the props were never going to last.
Mm.
I'll give you some examples, actually. So hopefully a bit of screen sharing here.
Oh, I'll take me out of it. There we go.
So yeah, this is you on stage in a strange new space, and the cardboard box looks like a cardboard box, but it's so important.
Mm.
It's specifically designed. It has to be flame proof.
Yeah.
Everything you bring on stage has
Yeah.
to be flame retardant, so it's not going to cause any accidents. And it does some other special things as well. So that was one thing, but we had designers who specifically made those so that they looked right. And you know, we said goodbye to quite a few boxes along the way.
Yeah, we did.
Including leaving one in India. But some of the other things, that the plastic bottle just looks like a plastic bottle, but it's such an important character in the show. And it's a very specific size, we found out.
Yes.
You can't
And I
just
mean,
buy-
I did do an unhealthy amount of shows with the same plastic bottle, and I do drink out of it. I mean, we probably used that one for like at least 6 months, right?
Yes.
Giving
yeah,
it a little swish before the show.
Yeah, we could have maybe got some Sterident involved and
Yeah, done it.
cleaned it out a bit more often.
Yeah, I'm still
But
standing.
It, you know, a proud achievement when I kind of finally reached level 1 of stage management was finding exactly the right replacement plastic bottle to find a new
Yes.
one, which just came from a takeaway. So it's the size of disposable plastic bottle that you get from a takeaway, but
Yeah.
you don't get from a supermarket. So, you know, you kind of discover those things.
Yeah.
And then the colouring book is important. We had several versions of those made, and they work in a specific way. You know, they have to open in sequence, and they have to do specific things to make it easy for you, so you're not flipping through trying to find the right page. The bike lights are a key part of it. I've swapped so many batteries
Yeah.
for those, but thankfully B&M Bargains still sell the same bike lights, so we're okay. And then just a simple drawing, which again we made various versions of to replace them as they got tatty. But the paper thickness is important, because if it's too thin, it lets too much light through. If it's too thick, it doesn't, and it needs to stand up.
There's a sequence where I have a torch behind it, and I reveal the drawing is facing me, and then I reveal bits of the drawing by putting the torch up to the paper, don't I? So yeah, the thickness was actually really crucial.
And then just simple things, it has to stand up on its own. It becomes part of the house. Little technical details about some of the physical aspects of the show are really important.
Yeah.
And you gradually learn, okay, so, and just the amount of different types of gaffer tape I played around with until I found one that actually made the right noise.
Oh yeah.
Which was a really key thing for me.
There's a time in the show, where I'm making a puppet, aren't I, out of all the objects that I've got in my bag. If you haven't seen the show, it's about a child refugee trying to find a safe space to live, but it was told through the metaphor of a space journey. So the kind of her leaving her home was kind of seen through the gaze of this like blast off, and when we see that creature with the bike lights, that's that kind of monster creature, there's a siren at the same time, and it's kind of like she's at a border with kind of search patrol lights, but she's kind of made that in her imagination, and we're painting it as this kind of monster. So yeah, that was the story. And then, as you can see here, I combined a few elements of what I had in my backpack. That was a bowl and bottles and bottle tops into a puppet at the end. And I had a little doll. And as part of that, I had to rip gaffer and pull Gaffer around, and it did kind of have to make a specific sound, didn't it? I remember, Joe, you being so pleased, and you're like, I found the one. This is this is it.
Yeah, because
We don't need that
some of
one
it,
anymore.
no, some of it was just very kind of limp. When you undo it, it kind of go, and it really kind of made a great sound effect when you just kind of emerged from behind the box and went.
Yeah.
So yeah, those little details are important.
But I think because you yourself are an artist, and you came into I mean, we'll talk a little bit about how you came into it all, but you came into performing arts as a performer, right? And I think you've got that eye, you've got an incredible eye for detail, and a an ability to kind of persevere until you get something perfect, which for someone like me working with you, and especially as a an operator in a show like A Strange New Space, it was a solo show, so uh I was the only performer on stage, and then another performer, Laura Street, took it over for a few gigs as well. So there was one performer on stage, and it's non-verbal, and the big kind of relationship on stage is between the audience and the performer, but also the performer and you, the technician who's operating all the music cues, right?
Yeah, I mean it's almost like a duet on stage
Yeah.
because there's so much music, so many different elements and sound effects,
Yeah.
and the lighting's tied into that as well. We'll come on to that, but the timing of when those things happens is really crucial. You there is this sort of dance that goes on between the performer on stage and the soundtrack, because we'd always said from the very beginning the show was going to be tiny. It was going to be something that we could, because we knew it would be likely to be going to a festival or two overseas,
Yeah.
and we needed to take it on an aeroplane. So it needed to involve as little physical material as possible. So
Yeah.
again, that all fitted into this tiny backpack, apart from the cardboard box. But there would be such richness in the lighting and the sound that you felt you were going somewhere. It's about her travelling and her trying to escape and get somewhere new. So you had to go through different places, and it needed that detail from sound and lighting to do it. But there's some key moments. Some of what only very little section of the show was a moment when I could just hit one button and then leave you to it. The rest of it, it's all quite tied in, and it made it a very difficult process for somebody else to pick up from me. Normally when you're working on a theatre show as a technician who's operating technical aspects, whether it's sound or lighting, you have a script, and you can read the script from a piece of paper, and when the performer says a certain word, you push a button, because that's the cue for something to change. When a show doesn't have words, you can't look at the script. You have to watch what's going on, but then you're also constantly flipping up and down, because you're going, okay, I know when that bottle gets lifted, that's the next. Oh, she lift? No. So you end up having to learn it, and the timing of those things, especially, there are one or two cues where the sound and the effects that are happening are supposed to surprise the main character. And in an ideal world, you are acting surprised rather than being really surprised. There's a slam
Yes.
when a door shuts and a light comes on, or camera flashes.
Yeah.
And I think we got to the point after a number of shows where I could have pushed the button at any time, but you kind of felt when it was going to happen.
Yeah.
Hopefully, so
Yeah.
You could act surprised without being. I mean, I know we've talked about this in the past, that those moments were still a bit of and you probably have tension dreams or nightmares about them, where you might suddenly hear a slam and you're like, oh, I need to do something, because
I think it's completely programmed into my biology now, that especially the when there's a scene where I'm kind of at a border, and I'm presenting kind of my paperwork, but I'm presenting the colouring book, to on a counter, and there's kind of like a slamming down, kind of slamming down of the screen.
Your
Yeah,
passport is refused.
exactly,
Yeah.
kind of moment. And I had to react from that straight away, but it was always slightly different. So I reckon if I heard that whatever time of night or day, I would instantly go into the next bit of that scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the fun part of what my job is live. I mean, it goes right the way. What's been great to work with on these shows, and
Yeah.
I've worked mostly on Strange New Space and Perfect, is to be involved from fairly early on. Now, you'd done some initial development on A Strange New Space before I joined the show,
Yeah.
and there was a really great sense of what it was going to turn into. And then, as a designer, and the creative part of me, it's a very collaborative process where everybody's in a room and they're going, "Ooh, could we do this? Could we do that?" And gradually the story and the world gets built. But then, knowing that I'd agreed to not only create this in the first place, but then help to take it on tour, I've also got this other hat on where I'm thinking, how do I make that work in loads of different places?
Yeah.
How do we get that to happen? So what keeps it exciting and makes live performance so much more exciting than just a filmed movie is it'll be different every time. The audience will make a big difference.
Yeah.
Sometimes an audience is really loud and is asking questions or clapping and laughing all the way through.
Especially with young audiences, isn't it?
Yeah, which is fantastic because it gives you so much to feed off.
Yeah.
And it means sometimes, okay, I need to push that particular button a little bit later because if I push it too soon, nobody will hear it because they're laughing too much. So we're all kind of feeding off each other.
Yeah.
And certainly, having started as a designer in video projection, working with live music, that's really exciting for me. That I'm playing along with a band or an artist.
So kind of VJing.
Yes, yeah. And it goes. Have I got any video? I've got something here. This is just a. This is a gig I did a couple of years ago. With Hannah Peel in London. That was just video as lighting, a couple of video projectors, one either side of her performing, and changing the pictures and the imagery that were coming out of the projectors and lighting her with those. But the main thing about that process is it's musical. It kind of has to happen on the beat.
Yeah.
When the song shifts into a chorus, you do something else. And then you go back to something with the verse, and then when you do the next chorus, you kind of bring in the same thing. And that sort of feeling, whether it's for a theatre show or a dance show or for music, helps the audience know where they are.
Yeah.
And particularly for A Strange New Space, when you've got a cardboard box and an empty stage, and you're supposed to be going to different planets and flying in rockets, something which makes the audience go, "Ooh, okay, we're back in space," or "Ooh, we're on a planet." That becomes really important. But it also, the timing of it is really satisfying when it works.
Yeah.
So, and it for Perfect that we did next, there was going to be video projection involved in it because we wanted to use the beautiful illustrations from the book and incorporate those. I said right from the beginning, I'm not an animator, so we need some proper animators in who can turn those illustrations into moving images. But in terms of how they would work in a physical space,
Yeah.
I could kind of
You're the guy.
understand how to make it happen. So most of the illustrations are of outdoor locations and action in the book, and the story, as it turned into a play with all of the physical elements, that was going to be split more evenly between indoors and outdoors locations. So a combination of the video and lighting became important for that.
Yeah.
So that we could, let's see, I've got somewhere. Oh, I didn't copy those. There is a. Oh no, there they are. Here we go. Let's have a look at perfect. So beautiful set design, and we'll see a few instances of some of the projections as well. But when the characters are indoors, it's made a simple decision that we weren't going to have projection at that point, and so there's a section of light that appears on the back as if it was light through an attic window, and that helped to say, okay, we're indoors. And it's just that little bit of an anchor that allows the audience to feel, when it returns later on or a number of times in the show, okay, we know where we are, we're back here. And when you're touring a show, you have to, because you only have, I mean, we worked with about a 3-hour get-in period. So we'd arrive at the venue 3 hours before the show was due to start, and everything had to work. And you can't be too detail obsessed at that point, because you've got to pick the most important. What can you actually achieve in 3 hours?
And 3 hours to someone watching this who doesn't, never even thought about this part of the whole process. You could think, oh, well, the show's only 50 minutes long, so 3 hours to get it up and going. Seems like seems like a really long time. 3 hours to do a 50-minute show, but really that's pretty much as sure to get in that you really get, isn't it? That's
absolutely
quite often it will be the whole day before on a slightly bigger than our scale. They'll be getting in for kind of 5-6 hours the day before.
Absolutely. And that my priorities at that point were, okay, to get you settled. You managed some of the setting up of the props and getting yourself organised backstage. Firstly, I needed to make the sound work, so we needed to be able to hear the amazing soundtrack for the shows, and then lighting. And the thing about a lighting system is that because every theatre is a different shape and has a different range of equipment, you have to adapt your initial plans to fit whatever you've got, and sometimes that involves running up and down ladders, and that's where the time comes in.
Yeah.
Occasionally, because we would send in advance to each venue, please can we have this when we arrive? Here is a lighting plan. So let's have a look. There we go. As a designer, a lighting designer specifically, this is what you do. Arranged around, and there's the box for A Strange New Space. And the kind of warm and cold colours in the lower half of the diagram there are the front light to make sure the audience can see you, but the warm is for happier places and the cool is for night time and for space. And then the range of colours at the top are for different locations. So orange was kind of a warm deserty planet, blue was nighttime, purple was space, green was the cave, red was for some of the danger moments, and then right
good
in the
memory,
middle,
Joe.
well, it's a lot of it's being a lighting designer specifically is about turning those ideas for what you want things to feel like into something which is actually three-dimensional, this plan, in terms of height and how it works around the performer in the middle. And yes, there are a couple of what we call specials. So the light over the top was for the alien abduction scenes, as if you're being zapped up into a spaceship. So that was going to point straight down. And there's another one on the right-hand side, which was the window that you would have been queuing at to try and get through with your passport.
Yeah.
And I decided in terms of how this was possibly going to work for me on tour was to use a combination of two bits of software on the same computer. So, firstly, in terms of the sound, Matt, who's the sound designer, you did created his work in this software called QLab.
Mm-hmm.
And if I just start from the beginning of the show here and just give you a little look at this. So there are a list of cues, but each one of these is a group of things that will happen together. So this bit here is the green bit is to trigger the lighting software to change the lights. There's a bit you can see that says rumble. That's a kind of a low thing that goes under everything else. And then there are several different layers of music.
Yeah.
What's great about QLab is that as a composer, you don't need to make a single sound file and keep editing it, because you can have all these elements you can bring in and out. And this became particularly important on some of the movement sequences for A Strange New Space, because we didn't know how long they would take. The audience was going to react as a performer on a varying sizes of stage. You might have to walk further, and so it might take longer.
Yeah.
So we set up this system whereby various bars of music would loop, and then when you're ready to go to the next point, I hit a button and it takes you to the next part of the music. But at the right point in the music, you want to finish a phrase. You want to actually get to the right point before you move on.
We kind of wanted it to feel like there was a musician live on stage, but we didn't have the money to be able to have a musician live on stage. So, that's where the incredibly clever QLab file came in, but also your awareness of music and phrases within music, and landing things on the beat and not landing things halfway through a bar and things. That was what helped all that.
Yes, I mean, I did start out. I did a drama degree at Bristol. I thought I would be a performer, but then I discovered technical work, and it came quite naturally to me. But everybody else thought it was magic, so I thought, great, I can keep on doing this, and that's why I've worked backstage ever since. But I still like performing, and more actually singing. And occasionally, I used to sing with a group in Liverpool. They actually featured in if anyone's seen the Anthony Walker drama that was on over the past couple of nights, they're in that. But we did one show at the Everyman in Liverpool, and I was singing and operating the video at the same time.
Wow, tough gig.
You could just about see me behind somebody else.
Yeah.
Although no, I'm on the end there actually with the black thing. But I'm holding one of those PowerPoint remotes in my hand, and then clicking buttons on that to move the video on.
Wowza!
In the middle of the show, which was exciting. But
oof, sweaty. That gives me anxious pangs.
Well, I find working with music or something with a rich soundtrack really satisfying, because the lighting and the video are really just other musical instruments to play along with.
Do you obviously you've worked, you're talking a lot about my stuff here, but could you give us a sense of the different scales that you've worked on, and how transferable, or what's the same between those scales and what is vastly different, and if anything, which where you feel like you're happiest, or where you can be most creative.
I think where I feel most creative is when I'm in to a design process early. Although having said that, sometimes I've made up some things that I'm really happy with in the last week, because the show has been devised, so the ideas have come together very late. And I don't like, I always say I'm not an animator. A lot of people have more patience to produce the beautiful work that they do. I'm not really a filmmaker as well. I do produce some movies that will form part of a show, but I make those to be seen with live actors in front of them.
Yeah.
It's part of a live show. I wouldn't want to be doing something that's only meant to be seen on a flat screen in a cinema or at home.
Yeah.
So, okay, quick photos of what I've done in my previous range of work. So, more of the work. Slideshow, yeah. More of the work
How
I've
can I
done.
get this thing to go? I can't get it to go. There's a little thing up the top there that's annoying, but don't worry.
Okay. So, this is one of the early shows I did at Bolton Octagon, and it was about a TV celebrity and maker called Fred Dibner, who was a local hero, and it involved some footage of him and also some things that we remade because the character was being played by a new actor. But it involved 3 screens. Sometimes they had the same things on, sometimes they didn't, but it was a way to integrate the video recordings of this person into the show, and it kind of had to happen because he was such a famous TV celebrity at the time. That's one extreme. What else have we got? So I've done work with dance companies. This is a piece called Chasing the Eclipse, which is about the sun and the moon eclipsing each other and represented also by dancers. That was an instance where I was involved in the lighting as well as the video, but that was a big outdoor event in Lincoln, in Grantham actually. So it was going to be performed at night on a big stage to a huge audience. But then we also developed it in a range of small spaces. And in those small spaces, it's hard to get a sense of, well, actually this screen is going to be 8 meters wide and 4 meters tall.
Wow.
And the scale of a performer relative to the planets is important. Here's one from Theatre Royal, Plymouth. People will have seen a lot of these videos of choirs coming together. This show involved collecting a lot of children singing and having their voices blended together on the same song and gradually appearing and disappearing, but also projecting onto a number of surfaces. So there's only one projector here, but it's actually projecting onto the big set at the bottom, those 3 floating screens and the background. And you want specific bits of detail to appear in each of those. So that's where the idea of projection mapping comes in.
Yes. Now I've been warmed up to this with Nina Dunn's Meet the Team interview a few weeks ago. She did some video projection mapping live onto her daughter's bunny rabbit. So she gave him a kind of neon jacket and a little facelift and things, all live projected because she had mapped the bunny. So yeah, if you want a little example of that, then check out Nina's. Little plug for hers.
Cool. And people take that everywhere, from when whole buildings are animated and brought to life for outdoor events, to things like this where you're focusing on quite small details in some cases that may or may not move in the middle of a show. But the video projection crosses over into lighting for me. It's kind of an extension of the two. This is a range of shots from an opera I worked on a number of years ago, and a lot of the lighting is actual lighting from a separate lighting designer. But when you can see those silhouettes on the wall and those streaks of light, those are projected. So what you've got is a combination of 2 different things, but you couldn't. You'd need another 100 lights if you weren't going to try and do those with conventional lighting. Exactly.
I think this is that's been Nina's process with Bob. There is no lighting design. All of the lighting is projected. So that's
it's great in some ways because you can play around with the colour. So I mentioned before on the lighting plan, and you have warm and cold lights to make things feel brighter or more gloomy. You can change the colour of projected light very quickly, and also move it about the stage. so that it hits
Yes.
different places. So it's an interesting thing, and I think the technology is just about at the stage now where you could do, and obviously for something like Bob, which is great and very intimate and fast moving as well,
Yeah.
it gives you that flexibility. And then, I've done bigger outdoor events. This is something in Lincoln Castle with a huge screen, and you're just waiting with your fingers crossed for it to get dark enough for everything to show up, because you can't you can't afford a projector big
Yeah.
enough to show up in daylight. But that was a good challenge for me, because it also involved a little bit of filmmaking. There was a scene that was supposed to be about soldiers in the very first tanks that were made in the First World War,
Yeah.
and we didn't have access to a tank, so we
Budget
filmed.
didn't run to that.
No, so what we did was we filmed the characters against a green screen, and then we had somebody else go to a tank museum in a different part of the country and film inside a tank, and then put those two things together. So it looks like they're in a tank, but they're actually not. So you do some cheats as well as you're moving around, and then let's have a look at the biggest things. The first time I got to play with a really big LED wall. Normally, I'm using a projector, and projectors are only as up to a certain level of brightness. But this time we had a massive wall of, like, the
Basically
advertising screens.
a huge TV.
Yeah. And what was funny about this, I was just doing the detail on the background for this particular show.
I remember when you were doing this, the Greenham Common one. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a massive open space, but the good thing about it for a live performance is because it's such a wide open area of land that is a common, it doesn't have natural lighting, so when it goes dark, it's very dark, and you can create drama really quickly. But it did mean, actually, that because this screen was so bright, I had to keep turning it down and turning it down and turning it down, because you couldn't see anybody in front of it.
Oh, just shadows. Yeah.
Just shadows, yeah. So Phil, who was the lighting designer for that, kept going, "Oh, can you turn it down a bit more, please?" But then at the end of the show, when I turned it up to full, it lit up the whole common, so they didn't need any lights to get people off the site. But that was a totally different sort of environment.
Yeah.
But yeah, as a creative person doing video especially, every show is different. For something like Perfect, it's a combination of work that was particularly about the work that the animators did to translate the book into beautiful moving images. And some of the things are more homemade. I like a show when I'm making my own material.
Yeah.
And it's not just a case of a director says, "Oh, can you play this film at this point?" It's like, well, we may not be able to for copyright reasons, to be honest. But also, I'd rather do it myself. I'd rather do something new.
Yeah.
And one of the early pieces I did, wow, this is back in 2008, is a show with a string quartet and a range of VJs, and I was doing VJing at the time to music more than anything else, produced moving images to go with different classical music pieces. And this piece here was some animation that was done entirely in the software, and I used a Wiimote.
Excuse me?
I used a Wiimote. Do you remember Wii's?
Yes.
The computer game thing. So the controllers from that have lots of different sensors and lots of different buttons. So all of the elements were animated by the movements of this
That's
computer game
much
controller.
less disgusting than what I thought when you said Wiimote, so...
I'm very glad.
Me too.
But there can be something, it could be something quite colourful and animated like that, to a piece like this for a show in Sheffield Crucible. And the projection at the back of this created the locations for a lot of different scenes. and this was supposed to be a doctor's office. So at the beginning of each scene, a date would come up because the show moves between several different dates
Yeah.
and time periods. So the numbers would vanish, but then you're left with a background. And I made this background. I wandered around Sheffield's civic halls and found pieces to put together to make something that looked like it belonged in the wall of a background of a doctor's office. I knew kind of where I thought it had to feel light and where it had to be dark. But with Photoshop, cut pieces together, because it isn't just one single photo. There are probably 4 different photos that make up that image at the background. But that's all kind of the fun, creative things you can do with video in a range of situations.
And I guess in that kind of situation, you're almost you're a set designer as well, really. If you're creating the locations and the changes of scenery using projection and using video, that's instead of having a change of scenery, right? And a change of backdrop.
There is a kind of sense of, I think over the past 20 years that projectors have become strong enough to do that, to light the background of a theatre. To more or less degrees, people have played with just projecting a background. I think it works best when it's a combination of the two, when you have something three-dimensional and also some changeable elements.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're back in Pantoland of painted backcloths.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's obviously a lot quicker to project an image than it is to paint a massive scenic backcloth. But I don't know if it's any more or less satisfying, really. So for me, it's part of the location, but it's never going to be all of it.
Yeah.
An audience needs to feel that it's in a three-dimensional world.
Yes. Yeah, and I guess that's where mapping and slightly more, a little bit more interesting. Software has kind of helped with that, right? To kind of bring it 3D and change the layers in the set.
Yeah, the technology's moved on so much now that it's so powerful in terms of how you can make pictures fit a space in ways that you wouldn't think they would happen.
So, I mean, so much of what you do and what you've talked about is kind of adapting and kind of going, okay, especially if a show goes on tour, it's worth saying that lots of shows don't tour. A lot of those that you were just showing us there, I imagine, were kind of site specific, which means that they were made specifically for that place, and they are in that place for a set amount of time, and then that's it, show over. But you've had to you've had to work and adapt and change a show for different spaces. Do you where was I going with that? Do you think that that is more of a creative process, because you're having to adapt all the time? Do you think that's more of a creative process than having a huge budget for a site-specific thing? You know your parameters, you know what you're going to be working for, or is it more creative, working with lesser parameters?
Just in different ways. There's always a scary moment. Even on a big site-specific project, because you don't get a couple of weeks to play around before the show happens.
Yes.
You have.
You probably talked about it for a year. Yeah.
Lots of long conversations over a long period, but then when you get into the space, there will still be things to change for both lighting and video and everything else, because you suddenly realise the audience isn't really getting that.
Yeah.
What we thought would be really impressive doesn't look so good. Something we thought that would be underwhelming is fantastic.
It's amazing.
Let's do more of that. So there's a bit of that, but I think for touring a show, the really interesting thing is that, especially as the designer that put the concept together at the beginning, is there's a perfect situation with everything you asked for, and then moving down from that, you go,
yes.
What makes the most impact? What tells the story most clearly? And those are the things I need to prioritise first. So we've been from situations where doing Strange New Space, walked into a theatre, a big shout out to the North Wall in Oxford, who had everything perfectly set up for us when we got in there. And it was like, oh, it's going to take me 20 minutes to be ready
Yeah.
for this show.
Yeah.
Fantastic. We'll have a wander around town. And then the other end of that is doing the show at a festival. Should I talk about Goa? Because that was
Yeah, go on.
hilarious.
Give us a laugh.
So we did a number of shows at a festival in India, which was amazing actually. Lots of different artists doing a wide range of work. And the venues that we performed in all had really good sound systems, but the lighting was interesting. The first venue we went to had a couple of film lights with a controller that you turned a knob on the top to make it brighter or darker.
Mm-hmm.
And that was too far away from where I was doing the sound. So I had a couple of students from the institute that we were performing in who did the lighting for me, and I just gave them hand signals to go bit brighter, bit darker. And all the way through the show, we kind of operated it by sign language.
And they were literally kind of side of stage, weren't they?
They were
Kind of, and they had to. They bless them. They had to have their back to the stage, just watching you for the entire show, and they did it.
They did it, and they
took it very seriously.
as well, though. So they'd kind of swap it. One would go, right, your turn to watch the show. My turn to do
It's very sweet.
But that was amazing. And then one of the bigger venues that we played was a council public venue. They do a lot of music events and concerts and speeches there. But because of the nature of A Strange New Space, it really had to be performed on the same level as the audience to get that connection.
Yeah.
So, of course, and this has happened a number of times, thank you, Tessa, where we'd go to a venue and Tessa would be like, oh, I want to be on the floor. And all of the lighting
and you're like,
was
there's
on the
a
stage.
beautiful stage there. Please,
Yes.
can you not just use that?
Yeah, no, we need to go on the floor. Right, so we'd got these, one for the last show we did, they brought in some lighting for us from the festival 20 minutes before the show started. And all of this technology is different. You need to set it up specifically to work. So thankfully we got it going. But we now know after that we can do the show with just 2 lights if we need to. But yes, the adaptation is the most creative part when you're on the road.
And how? And I remember my initial question now. How do you prepare students for that? How, now you're spending all of your time lecturing and teaching at Bristol or Vic, and you were at LIPA for 15 years before that. Like, how much can you prepare students for that, and how much do you have to just say, look, this is probably what it's going to be like, and you're going to have to think really quick on your feet. How prepared can they be?
I think any technical training course will gradually build up the amount of equipment that you work with at any one time.
Mm-hmm.
So you never go into a completely full toy box. You've always got, okay, well, you can use these things right now, and we're using a small room, a small studio to play around in. And you gradually build up the complexity of what they're working with. And with the range of shows that we do, sometimes simultaneously, you have to compromise. And you have to fault find. There are some days when you'll come in and half of the lighting rig isn't working. And it was working last night, and it's not working now. So what happened?
Yeah. And do they work in different spaces as well? Because I know you do shows around town. You've worked, at the Tobacco Factory and things, as well as Bristol or Vic.
The Bristol Vic, the Wickham Theatre that belongs to the Elvic Drama, to the University Drama Department.
Yeah.
Lots of different spaces, and shuddering to think about it. The tunnels underneath. Temple Mead Station. We did a promenade piece in there, which was amazing, but freezing cold. It was a couple of years ago when it was snowing outside, and it was actually colder inside the tunnels than outside. But we do adapt to different spaces because it's really useful for them to get a sense of how you need to adapt. And every time you do a show, even though it's supposed to be performed in one theatre, you're almost never rehearsing it in that theatre. You're working in different rehearsal rooms.
Yes.
You're drawing lighting plans. and different diagrams that represent how you think things will be arranged.
Mm.
And then a week or so maximum before the show's actually supposed to open to an audience,
Mm.
you physically get in there and you see if your plans work. And if they don't, you change them.
Yeah.
That's, you go, okay, well, that's not successful in that position. I need to move it downstage a bit so it's actually hitting the person in the right angle.
Mm.
So yeah, you have to adapt and not be too precious about what you wanted to achieve.
Yeah.
And I think that's the really healthy part of the creative process. Every time we do a run through of the show, we have notes at the end. And sometimes things go wrong, and someone will say, why did we hear that slamming sound in the middle of a really tender, serious scene? And you're like, oh, sorry, push the wrong button. And people will go, oh, right, okay, don't do it next time.
Yeah.
And there's no blame attached to that. It's just a question of, okay, we learn how to do things better.
Mm-hmm.
And you keep trying, and you keep polishing the show until it gets its most effective to tug on the audience's heartstrings.
Yeah. And what has we talked about this a little bit the other day. What has working on Zoom and working in this new way kind of taught you and made you realise?
I think because we've been quite ambitious in the way that we worked in Zoom, involving live cameras and also pre-recorded material being mixed into it. And in a Zoom environment, at the moment, the people who are watching this may just see me, or they may see me and your logo. But there could be another dozen people around us who are just being quiet, who are observing what we're doing. And some of them might be playing sound effects in, some of them might be playing some video later, or there could be other performers waiting to come on. The more you look at it and the more you try and change it to be more theatrical, actually the more it feels like a normal theatre. And you get, interesting things that are just the same as you would have in a normal theatre environment. You kind of have to manage the room in the same sort of way.
Yeah.
So, we don't want to spend the rest of our lives doing it. We want to be back in a real space, but there's a lot you can do online.
And you said you've been actually enjoying the sound world a bit more than you thought.
Yes, I mean, I've done a bit more editing this term than I would normally, and there's another great tutor who teaches sound specifically, not me. When I first started doing technical work for shows, I did some live sound because I was the only technician in the building and I had to do everything. But technology's moved on massively since then. But I do enjoy, I think, the detail of sound. Possibly because I've done so much lighting and video, I know how I can quickly make something work. But as someone who doesn't work so frequently with music or audio, I'm pickier as an audience member. So I think I'm more detail obsessed.
I guess you work with sound and music all the time, but it's not your responsibility, is it?
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
So having that responsibility, you're so used to analysing it and picking up on it and being very responsive to certain tiny bits of the music that your ear is incredibly good. So, actually being able to be in control of that must be quite nice.
Yeah, I think that's something I want to play around with, but I'm not so skilled with I can't play a specific musical instrument. I can read music, which is great for working with live music on a musical theatre piece. But to actually, some people like Matt Huxley as a composer who can just sit down on the keyboard and create new songs live. Is incredibly talented. So I'm not there, and I don't have the patience, to be honest, to learn. So I'm never going to aspire to that. But I think that's something I'd like to do more of in the future.
I'm going to wrap it up in a minute. If any of you guys watching want to put any questions to Joe, now would be a good time before we wrap it up. One thing that I've kind of been rounding up all of our interviews with, Joe, is say someone's been watching this and gone, oh wow, I love theatre, and but I hate performing, and I thought that was it. Then I can't work in theatre, but actually maybe this is what I want to do, or maybe this is what I want to pursue. What would you say to do next? What would be the next steps if someone's not really got that much experience and is finding out about this job for the first time?
So the kind of places I've worked at as a teacher, at university level, that's somewhere you might be going to eventually. But in the meantime, the kind of ways you would normally get into working on theatre pieces. So local amateur groups through school plays and productions. Also now some churches have so much technology.
Wow.
Because they have live bands and they have projection, they have many more effects. That can be interesting if you're involved in that kind of group. But certainly contract your local drama teacher, drama group, and say, I really love theatre, but actually I'd quite like to work backstage. Can I have some experience? And there are some things they may not let you go up a ladder straight away.
Yeah.
But in terms of stage management, that's often a really good way in, because handling props, organising actors backstage, recording rehearsal details and all the planning and organisation, that's something you can start to understand from an early age, even if they don't allow you to go up a ladder.
Yes.
And they might, quite often a lot of people, even if they don't go up and focus lights, they can still operate a lighting desk and learn the programming of that. So that's a great way in. And hang around backstage. If you have contacts, if you know somebody who works in theatre, approach them. Everybody at school now does a couple of weeks work experience. You could choose to do that at a theatre. And contact your local venues for those opportunities. Obviously it's difficult at the moment, but once things are back to normal, we're particularly keen, both in education and professionally backstage, to encourage more people to work backstage, because there aren't enough of us.
Yes.
There are a lot of people who want to be on stage and be famous, but not enough to work backstage. And the industry has been predicting this for a long time. Up until a couple of months ago, the cultural industries of live events and entertainment are one of the biggest successes and the most healthy parts of the economy. But the more technology gets involved in a show, and the more impressive it gets, and the more lighting and video and moving stages and all those kind of things that are now involved, the more people it takes to make them work. And there aren't enough of them.
Yeah, definitely.
So now is a good time to learn, actually, because I think that there will be a big demand. Some people's careers will change, but eventually, because it's such a big business, live theatre is going to come back. And it will need backstage people.
Definitely.
And it's dead exciting.
I want to end on that note, but we do have just one question that's come in, actually from our good friend Alina, the star of Perfect. She has said, what are your goals moving forwards in your career? Have you got a dream thing, a place, a venue, or an idea you'd like to create a design for?
Ooh, good question.
It's a double whammy, that one.
It is. So I think right now at this moment, because I'm sort of planning for what will work in potentially an online environment as well as a live environment, I'd love to do something as rich as the Encounter.
Wow.
There's an amazing show that Complicité produced a couple of years ago, and it has this immersive soundtrack. You have to listen to it on headphones. because the sound is spatial and it moves around you, and it's so amazing a journey that you go on. I think audio is an area I really want to play around with a lot, despite it being completely different from everything I've done so far. So there's that. I think career-wise, I've done some big outdoor work. I've worked in a range of venues, but actually, for the connection to an audience, as a member in the audience who goes to see a lot of live music or theatre, I really like small places with lots of people crammed in. I like a really, Bristol's lucky to have a number of great, really intimate venues like the Tobacco Factory, like the Wardrobe especially, where everyone feels really close, and it all feels very real because it's so small. So my ambitions aren't to get big. Actually, I'd love to be working on more pieces again that are in a really close relationship. It's kind of a bit like close-up magic. When someone's just doing card tricks. It's actually more impressive sometimes than a big box sawing somebody in half. So I want to play with audio more, and I want to be involved in some very small, intimate venues, I think.
Well, bring them back, bring it on. I really hope that by the end of the year, that's exactly what we can all be doing. Thank you so much, Joe. That's the end of our live questions. But if you guys are watching this, as I said at the start, if you're watching this later on, sorry, I've got a cat who wants to be fed. It's not a good time, Bertie. If you are watching this later on, then do type a question to Joe in the comments, and I can pass it on to Joe, and we can answer it for you later. All that's left to say is a huge thank you, Joe. Thank you for today, and thank you for being excellent always. And one day we shall create together again.
Definitely.
Brilliant. I'll keep you guys on, and I'll say goodbye to you, Joe. Thank you so much, and hopefully see you soon.
See you soon.
Bye. Just before you guys disappear, I just wanted to give you a little heads up of what else we've got for you guys to watch whilst summer holidays are happening, and perhaps you've watched this and you've enjoyed the interview and you want to see some other content. So if you go on our website, tessabide.com, we've got a What's Online page here, and here is a collection of what we've been doing over lockdown, basically. So we've got a collection of all of our bedtime stories, and including a whole series of the Tap Dancing Mermaid at a chapter a night. That's all of our interviews with the different collaborators, and then we've got workshops there as well. I did a series of 3 different puppetry workshops, puppetry making, introduction to puppeteering, and a bunraku tabletop puppetry lesson. So if you'd like to see any of that stuff, then just head over to the website. And before you go, another little shout out for my crowdfunder that we're doing for the Anarchist mobile library. So the Anarchist mobile library is going to be this interactive audio experience for young people and their families to do wherever they are. It's also going to go to schools and libraries. A break away from screens and a physical adventure to go on, kind of immersed in this oral sound design that we've got going on. So if you'd like to find a bit more about that, then I'm going to play our video about it in just a sec. And I would hugely appreciate it if you wouldn't mind sharing, and if you're able to, donating to the crowdfunder. It ends, if you're watching this live, it ends this Monday coming. So we've got like 4 or 5 more days left of it to really get it up there. I think we're about 300 and something pounds off. So yeah, if you're watching this live or this week, then if you could help with that, that would be amazing. And if you're watching this in the weeks in the future, chill. Thanks so much for watching. Maybe check it out. If it's in September, it'll be done by then. Thank you again for watching this series. This is the end of our live content that's been going out kind of week to week through lockdown. We're going to concentrate on the audio project now for the next month. And come September, you'll be able to try that out. So I want to say a huge thank you if you've checked out any of the other stuff and you've been with me through this this kind of scary and bewildering journey. It's been lovely to feel connected to you, our audience, and my friends and family and fans and things who have been watching. Yeah, it's kept me going, and I hope it's kept you going in some respect as well. Here's our video about the Anarchist Mobile Library. Stay safe, stay well, and hopefully I'll see you again soon. Thank you. Bye. Hello. Firstly, I just want to say a huge thank you for you watching this video. This is a really difficult time to fundraise for projects, and with all of the uncertainty, it means a lot that you're even watching this video. If you don't know me, then my name is Tess Abide, and I'm a theatre maker and performer based in Bristol, UK. My theatre company makes shows for young people and their families. You might have met us in a theatre, outside a library, or in the middle of a field. We aim to inspire communities who don't normally have access to the theatre using important stories, a bold physical language, and a few puppets thrown in for good measure. This year we were due to be touring our new show, The Anarchist Mobile Library, around theatres, museums, libraries, schools and festivals, but unfortunately all of our 28 gigs were cancelled due to COVID. So we put our thinking caps on and started to make a plan to get this show out to you guys along with its important message. We made the Anarchist Mobile Library to empower children to read more and also to change the world. The original show toured in a caravan, and the audience would choose which adventures they would go on and then what happened whilst on them. We were training them to be anarchist librarians and to change the endings of stories they saw around them. This summer we are adapting the show to be an audio adventure, accessible digitally for you guys, our audiences, wherever you are. Children or families will be able to go online and access the show, but then we invite you to put down your gadget or go away from your screen to fully immerse yourself in the adventure that we'll be taking you on orally. I'm working with an amazing sound designer called Chris Menez, and together we're making these immersive sound worlds where you'll be transported to a pirate ship or a land of dinosaurs, a witch's kitchen, and loads more as well. As you journey on these adventures, your choices will pop up on the screen and you'll be able to change the route of the narrative and leave you hopefully feeling empowered to change the stories that you see around you too. Basically, we want to make a new generation of tiny activists. So it's a really exciting project, and one that we think could really inspire and empower young people during a really uninspiring and disempowering time. Plus, it will keep the company afloat and give crucial work to artists who are really struggling to earn a living at the moment. So to fund it, we are rerouting the pot of money that we had to tour the proper show this year, but unfortunately there's a shortfall of about £1,000. Anything that we raise on top of this will go towards keeping Tess Abide Productions running after this project is over. This comes to an end in September, so then I can keep paying all the artists, and hopefully that we can then take the actual caravan show out when it's safe to do so. As we weren't a registered organisation with Arts Council England, when they were giving out emergency pots of funding for organisations, we weren't eligible for these £35,000 pots. So we're trying to make do without, and with your help. So to say our huge thanks, we've got a host of really lovely rewards that we've collected from a few of our different shows, including stunning artwork by the artist Kathy Fisher from the book Perfect. We made a show of that a few years ago, and we've got this artwork in postcard form, in beautiful high quality A4 prints, and you even have the opportunity to receive one of the original paintings too. We have signed copies of my book, The Tap Dancing Mermaid, that I can inscribe for you as well. And you can book me for live storytellings or workshops over Zoom for your family or your class or your Scouts group. So we have lots of ways to thank you. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this video, and I really hope I get to see you in a theatre really soon. Take care. Thank you.